This is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. The danger is in a particular location. It increases towards a center. The center of the danger is here, of a particular size and shape, and below us. The danger is still present, even in your time as it was in ours. The danger is to the body. It can kill. The form of the danger is an emanation of energy. The danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhabited. This is the proposed inscription to mark the grave of our radioactive waste. Located deep in the foreboding deserts of New Mexico, it will be inscribed on 32 25-foot tall granite pillars in English, Spanish, Russian, French, Chinese, Arabic, and Navajo, and followed by space to add more languages. Outside of the radius of these pillars will be a giant earthworks, a massive wall of dirt. And at the center of this site, directly above the waste, will be a granite room containing more explanations, more information, and diagrams to elucidate and educate interlopers as to the danger that they stand atop. This project is not designed to teach the children of today. It is not a monument or a museum. It is not for us. It is designed to warn off humans who survive the possible destruction of history. It is for the survivors of the looming apocalypse. Or maybe more terrifying, to ward off aliens who find the remnants of our mistakes long after we have been consumed by them. Now, consider, what would your players do if they stumbled across this on the hex map? How would they react? Would they leave as the builders intended? Would they try to strip it for any valuables? Would some player make this their new mission to keep this slumbering danger asleep? Or would they do what my players would do? Would they dig? Would they unleash the horror onto the world and bring forth an age of terror? Radiation is scary. It is silent, it is deadly, it is unseen, it's omnipresent. It's a force of nature that is so strange that it could be straight out of a fantasy book. And this way of dealing with our waste that leaks death reminds me instantly of the ruins across some of my favorite fantasy worlds. I mean, the Forgotten Realms is called the Forgotten Realms because it is littered with dead kingdoms who ended so badly and so quickly that they have been literally lost to time. It also reminds me of the monuments that have been left over by civilizations in the relatively recent past, and how completely we managed to forget truths that at one time were incredibly important to entire societies. I mean, we're still not 100% certain what Stonehenge was actually for. The disappearance of the Mayans is entirely unsolved, and their ruins remain like the bones of their civilization's corpse. We don't even know really how the pyramids were made, and the only reason that we know why they were made is from oral tradition, and largely because of the Rosetta Stone, which allowed the translation of hieroglyphics, and even then, it took years to be fully translated, and then was only possible because a couple of the languages from their time had survived, something that the Egyptians could not have ever predicted. One similar warning to this are the tsunami stones in Japan, these monoliths that say don't build below this point, something that I think very poignantly to the conversation that we're having, Fukushima ignored. So this video is about a very real horror, and also about how horrors like this belong in our games. We love an ancient power, right? We love the shattered landscape of Wildemount, which is brimming with the cast-off trash of the gods that walked the earth that we now call vestiges. We love the one true ring of Sauron. This is a video about if we couldn't dispose of the ring neatly and instantly in the fires of Mount Doom, and instead we had to bury it. Now, for me, radiation and its true terror is inherently analogous to the magical power or the great evil of fantasy. There is always some great terror that is tempting us to take its bargain. And very often, it doesn't intend to actually give us power, or at least not in the way that we think. What is it that Gandalf says? Evil does not share power. So throughout this video, I'm going to treat the radiation, this wasted radioactive material that we've sent down into the depths of our world, and I'm going to analogize that with a great and ancient evil. That might be a lich that has been destroyed and stuffed down in a tomb. That might be a hidden demon. That might be, something like radiation itself, though I think it's more interesting if this evil has a sentience. Sentient radiation is a terrifying idea. Oh, goodness gracious. This is a video about temptation. It's about misunderstandings that kill. It's a video about sleeping power. Welcome to spooky season. So let's start with a brief history of our realities management of this problem. Now, ever since we've been creating radioactive waste, we have been worried about where we'd store it and how. In 1981, the problem came to a head in the United States. The Department of Energy had been accumulating this mess for the better part of 40 years, and this waste was unlikely to become any less deadly for the next 10,000 years. Now, for a little bit of perspective, that is about 3% of the total human existence, right? Which science estimates we evolved around 300,000 years ago. It is, however, nearly 2 times the length of recorded history, which we think began with Sumerians in Mesopotamia in about 2900 BC. Now, before the 80s, we had dumped the radioactive material into the sea at more than 50 sites in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, which is literally insane to me. But as the world started to realize just how bad that would become, they decided to stop. They couldn't shoot it into space because what if something went wrong? Can you imagine how bad that would be? So it was decided that the one option was to bury it. But that led to this big question: how would we warn future generations of this buried death? So enter the Human Interference Task Force. It was a dream team of communications experts, archaeologists, social scientists, and climatologists, all dedicated to solving this problem using a variety of systems, but primarily concerning semiotics, which is the study of signs or symbols and their use or interpretation. Now, the HITF came up with a bunch of different methods for accomplishing this goal. Some of which are brilliant, some of which are insane and incredible, and some of which have their own unique terror to them. That is where we're going to focus a lot of our discussion for this video. Now, the tactic that they eventually settled on is the simplest. They wanted to ward off would-be intruders by appealing to their own best interest. They decided on a physical landmark and this uniquely foreboding warning that I read at the beginning of the video. I think that it is truly terrifying. The nature of this inscription is so strange that it has this odd, kind of unnatural feeling to it. It's like an uncanny valley for text. It's as if you could only come up with something like this through research and crowdfunding the answer. It's a statement not made by an individual or even a collective, but by a hive mind. It is designed to awaken the mind, but it ends up sparking something in my heart that is much more powerful. Fear. Now, this idea of monuments is a classic in fantasy and science fiction. Its weakness is that its structure feels to me the same way that tombs and places of great treasure have, right? The Egyptians also wanted to keep intruders out of the pyramids. And it is after their culture of tomb building with traps and secret passages that we get the classic D&D tradition of terrifying dungeon that holds powerful secrets and shimmering treasures. Now, I can absolutely imagine my players thinking that the creators of this warning did not want to keep my players away for their own good, but in fact wanted to hide some great treasure for themselves. I could also see my players going, danger. Danger is my middle name. Because of the nature of D&D and the curiosity and the thrill-seeking of the average adventurer, any kind of warning is also an invitation. But in D&D, we aren't just restricted to saying stop. I mean, the Egyptians themselves didn't just use traps and false treasure rooms and the like. They actually placed curses and other dark magic on their tombs to punish interlopers. And while that didn't stop the grave robbers in our world, it might stop an errant PC who wants to try their luck at unleashing the great evil or getting a little gribbly treasure. Heck, whoa, the magic used in the traps might be inherently tied to this evil. What a way to give your players a taste of the big bad, right? Hit them with something really nasty. And when they start to ask questions, explain that magic shouldn't be able to do that or hasn't been able to do that since the old times. That is spicy. Now, the very legible and civilized method of communicating danger with these pillars and the warning on it was just one of the tactics that the HITF came up with. I mean, they thought up some crazy ways that they might alter the landscape in order to make it more foreboding so that wanderers would think twice before entering it. They came up with this idea of these large mounds of earth that were shaped like lightning bolts, and they all emanated from this single square site which was above where the radiation was buried. They had the idea to make this huge square pile of dynamited rock, which over time would still appear anomalous and give like a sense of something having been destroyed there. They also came up with this idea of hundreds of house-sized stone blocks, all of them dyed black and arranged in an irregular square grid, suggesting this kind of network of streets which feel ominous and lead nowhere. The blocks are also intended to make a large area entirely unsuitable for farming. Then they came up with this idea of a black hole, which was not a black hole, but this enormous slab of basalt or black dyed concrete, which covered all the area above this dig site and which rendered the area completely unfarmable and unlivable. Maybe my favorite though, and I think the most iconic from this brainstorm, was a landscape of thorns. This mass of many irregularly sized spikes of concrete or stone, all protruding up from the ground in various different directions. Sometimes they were on a grid, sometimes they shot out at different angles, and sometimes they were like walled in by another concrete wall outside of it. All of those are amazing, but can you imagine like presenting a forest of stone spikes to your players after they crest a hill in a forlorn part of the world? Or maybe even better, they like hear about it in a local tavern. Because our job as DMs is partly to attract players to wild places, and this is great for us. I want to go see the stone forest of thorns. The tales that would be told about such a spot would also be crazy. And in addition, we're also in a fantasy world, so like what else would the wizards of old have cursed this landscape with? Maybe there's an immortal dragon that guards the forest. Maybe ghosts who were killed in the final battle against this evil stalk the grounds. Maybe the restless minions of the ancient terror are still buried there and they present their own implicit danger. But let's also not forget that as much as the people who imprisoned this evil wanted it to stay silent, that doesn't mean that they were able to keep it completely down. Imagine what the horrible magic this thing possesses would do to such a cursed landscape. Would it change the plants and animals that live there? Would it shape the stone? Would it change the weather? Would it irradiate? I mean, would it just present like an emotional aura that can be felt by any who come near? And also consider, is it awake enough to try to escape? How is it trying to get out? But the HITF didn't stop with landscaping. They also came up with an idea that has since been enshrined in pop culture with songs and t-shirts and a documentary, which is the concept of a Ray cat. This is so wild. A politician and semiotician who is Francois Bastide and Paolo Fabri, I think I'm saying those names right, they came up with this proposal for the following. I'm going to quote, "In order to make humans aware of the presence of atomic radiation, animals can be bred that will react with discoloration of the skin when exposed. Such an animal species should dwell within the ecological niche of humans, and its role as a detector of radiation should be anchored in cultural tradition by introducing a suitable name, e.g., Ray Cat, and suitable proverbs and myths." After all, cats have existed with humans since about 7,500 BC, longer than humans have kept history. Why not make them our canaries to the coal mine of our ancient horror? I mean, can you imagine the players getting a pet? A little dragon frog, right? And then learning from locals or a history check that dragon frogs are sensitive to true evil. They hate it, and they will turn black as night or still as the grave when they come near it. So your players get hired by a local king to go recover an heirloom from his ancestral grave in anticipation of a coming war that he's worried about winning. But as they approach the site of the tomb, there are bas-reliefs around it that have long been worn away by time, and the inscriptions on these stones has been crossed out over and over and over again by generations of defiling robbers. But as they get really close to this tomb, the frog is suddenly quiet. They peer down into its little pouch, and it has turned pitch black. Something horrible is near. And this could work in the reverse also. If a species of insects or like guardian beasts that is attracted to evil and feeds off of its energy, so it would act not only as a warning but also as a deterrent to interlopers. I think that this is so cool. It's a way of making promises early on by giving your players information and little tidbits that then you can have pay off later in a really meaningful way, and that is always so much fun. Before I go any further, if you are enjoying these ideas that I'm coming up with and spitting out and you're liking this video, please consider liking, consider subscribing. That way you'll get notifications about when I do more crazy videos like this. And if you're really enjoying this, leave a comment down below with another little detail from history that you have used to influence your games. I love this stuff and I want to do more videos like this, so let me know if you're interested. Now, speaking of myths and culture is the final big tactic that they came up with, and in the end abandoned, is so wild that it sounds like it's straight out of Dune. Thomas Sibibok, again, I think I'm getting that name right, who was a Hungarian semiologist and linguist and the founder of biosemiotics, which studies, I need to quote this, the pre-linguistic meaning-making biological interpretation processes, production of signs and codes, and communication processes in the biological realm. That is a quote. I do not fully understand what that means, but anyways, he's a smart guy. Sibibok came up with several ideas in his report entitled Communication Measures to Bridge 10 Millennia, which is a read. The link is down below. But this paper delves into the power of myth, citing the story of Pandora's box as an indelible warning of horrors. He proposed an idea of an atomic priesthood of scientists who would carry the secret truth of radiation forward, and they would practice this nurturing of a religious mythology surrounding the site and the danger there. It would be their responsibility to use annual rituals and culture itself to transcend geographical location and time by building a lasting folk memory of terror. This is crazy, and it's so incredibly cool. I mean, the idea of a religion being formed to guard against the releasing of an ancient evil is fantasy enough. But then the secret society of atomic priests at the core of the religion, this secret fraternity of knowledgeable persons, all who understand secret hidden truths about the world and seek to keep them out of the hands of those who could do ill with them. It's so cool. But back to temptation. What if even these priests are tempted by the power of this hidden horror? What if a subcult develops that wants to awaken the evil, or maybe use it to pursue power, or even try to do real good using it? But we all know you can't do good with pure evil. Now we have this fractious relationship between some of the most powerful living people, and that is a juicy, great drama for the players to come in and disturb. Another alternative idea for this is inspired from me by Warhammer 40k and the Priesthood of the Mechanicum, who are the leftovers of the scientists and forge masters of Mars after technology turned against humanity and humanity was forced to put it down and sunk into a dark age. And so the Mechanicum basically worships the machine as a god. They worship what they call machine spirits, which are basically semi-autonomous processes that exist inside of computers. So what if our knowledge of radiation and this religion diluted our understanding of it, and it became so broken that it became just hints of what it once was? If the powerful technologists and magicians who walked the face of the earth once were now seen as gods, and your players slowly uncovered the truth of how their hubris and their lust for power had doomed the world once, and how it may doom it again. Speaking of this idea, if you want some wild images and thoughts in this vein, in 2011, Brian McGovern Wilson and Robert Williams published The Cumbrian Alchemy, which is a book that explored the power of atomic folk objects, costumes, objects, and rituals intended to create an oral tradition around the sites on Cumbria's nuclear coast so that they will never be forgotten. It is an art project that has these wild images of a theoretical atomic priest who's wearing clothes like Oppenheimer in honor of him. And these crazy art pieces of this horror slumbering beneath, more terror up above. This stuff is so evocative for me, but the only copy that I could find of the book was for $300. So if anyone has a copy that they would be willing to loan me, please. Please. I haven't gotten to go to the library yet to go look for a copy or see if I can get one on loan. Finally, this whole method of stopping the unleashing of the terror has kind of evolved in our modern point of view. Finland's Onkalo Spent Nuclear Fuel Repository went online last year, and that is to say it was finally opened for the burial of death. But it tried a completely different approach to avoid being disturbed. It is completely unmarked, and when full, it will be covered, and then everyone will hope that it is never disturbed. So remember, as a player in my games, that doom could be lurking unknown beneath your feet at any time, hidden by fools riding the hubris of their incredible discoveries and willing to rely on hope that their demons remain silent. Thank you so much for watching to the end. This video means a whole lot to me. I have a bit of an atomic history in my family. My grandparents met on Los Alamos. My grandfather worked in nuclear fission for years. My grandmother was Oppenheimer's secretary, and the guilt and the fear that they felt about the things that they and their co-workers and friends brought onto the world was kind of incredible and sits with me. My grandfather died certain that nuclear power would save the world, and I don't think that he's entirely wrong, but I think that a continuing awareness of the danger of it is incredibly important. Thank you for watching. Please, if you liked this, like, subscribe, comment. If you want to help support the channel in a more direct way and a more, well, let's say it, monetarily direct way and help me pay my bills instead of going back to bartending, you can check out my Patreon at patreon.com/milesawaygames. I post something every Saturday there. I post all my videos there, and I just try to provide valuable stuff that is thinking about tabletop role-playing games and the world critically. Hi, I'm exhausted editing Miles here. I just got done with everything. I actually did something in excess of what I was expecting myself to be able to do for my Saturday something, which every Saturday on Patreon, I post a little something about tabletop role-playing games or thoughts that I've been having. Well, I was kind of bummed that I didn't make an actionable way for you to put these thoughts in your games, so I fixed that. On my Patreon right now, you can go and grab a list of rolling tables to be able to make your own slumbering evil fastness to throw into your game. It's kind of designed for fantasy, but I feel like it would work out for something a little bit more sci-fi. Let's let Shooting Miles wrap you up. Thanks again. Stay miles away from boredom, and I'll see you next time.